Hey guys, how we doing? So we're back on another Mother's Basement video and we're doing another What's in an OP because I find this rather interesting that he can analyse the whole opening and what it means for the actual show. It's absolutely fantastic. And a couple of you mentioned the My Hero Academia ones and he's done one for the first 3 openings, so figured we'll do those because I love My Hero Academia. No spoilers, right, because I have not watched past episode 4 of season 3 because I'm waiting for like a big bulk to just watch in an evening because waiting every week was annoying me, so... Even though I'm kind of like, I want to know what's going on. But yeah. Anyway, what's in an OP? My Hero Academia's Hidden Story, Part 1. Let me just close this down. Let's open this up, and then let's click play.
Since My Hero Academia started airing a year ago, you guys have been asking me to analyze its
that's
openings,
really good.
and I can't blame you. Their fantastic music and animation makes them some of the most exciting and catchy openings in recent memory. But I've been hesitant to cover them because while they're really well put together, they're a little on the simple side, at least at first glance. They stick very closely to the standard shonen formula of character introductions,
show all the characters,
arc, big fight scene, so there's not much to analyze in any given one. At least not enough for a full video if I'm not talking about interest curves, which I already did with Haikyuu, so, you know. However, once you put them all together, a story begins to emerge. One that develops across each successive OP, showing the progress of Deku's relationship with All Might over the course of the series, and his own development as a hero. Today and next week, we're going to be exploring that and other details in these openings, and figuring out which of the OPs is the strongest overall. This isn't the first time that Studio Bones has done this with an opening. Eureka 7 did a great job of building on character relationships from OP to OP, but it is the first time that they've placed so much emphasis on that connection, using shifts in the character dynamic as a jumping off point to set the tone for each OP. Speaking of Eureka 7 though, Bookwalker has a really great deal going on ebooks of the manga if you use the promo code BASEMENT. If you've got any love for the classic mecha series, or if you're just curious about getting into it, stay tuned to the end of the video to find out more. The first Hiroaka opening, The Day, kicks off with a powerful spotlight lighting up All Might as he stands before Deku. We see All Might in several extreme close-ups before cutting out to the full view, highlighting the iconography in his costume, the vaguely American color scheme in the boots, gauntlets, and chest insignia, his nifty belt that looks like an angry owl, and his crazy pointy hair, not to mention his rippling muscles. This paints him as he wants to be seen, as a symbol of peace, sometimes literally, the ideal superhero, something to be looked up at in awe, which is certainly how Deku takes it in, standing in almost blind admiration. He starts from a kneeling, subservient position, but then stands up, trying meekly to reach out to his hero. These shots, which never show the two in the same frame at once, and the pained emotion on Midoriya's face, give us the impression that All Might is an idol entirely beyond his reach. But then All Might looks back, acknowledging his struggle, and the whole context changes. Suddenly, Deku isn't just reaching out for an impossible goal, he's being challenged to catch up. This scene mirrors their first conversation on the rooftop from the end of episode 1. The OP cuts away to character shots at the critical moment. Midoriya's hand twitches right before the jump, but it's timed so that we can't really tell if he's pulling away nervously or starting to grasp at the dream he hopes to one day achieve. The character shots themselves are pretty straightforward, giving us a brief impression of each character's basic personality and design in time with the music without lingering or expanding on any given one. Like the first season itself, the OP is content to simply show us that all of these cool character designs exist and trust that we'll stick around long enough to find out what they're all about when it actually has time to develop them. That said, it is pretty impressive how they managed to encapsulate each character in a single pose, with Aoyama showing his ego by shoving his face up against the camera, Ida looking overly serious as he always does, and Froppy and Ochako looking just the cutest. And it's truly amazing how much personality they managed to give Toru just using the gloves on her hands. From there we jump to the title card, which fades into a shot of Deku walking alone in the rain, with no coat or umbrella on a darkened overpass, while a huge crowd mills about in the well-lit street below. This shot does a great job of emphasizing the isolation and despair that Deku feels as someone without work, making his dream of
ability.
being a hero almost impossible, despite his optimism. To hammer that point home,
gonna
as
do
he
it anyway.
sadly walks away, we see what he was looking at. A billboard urging people to become heroes or maybe sidekicks today. Deku continues his sad
Alright.
march home, the city a blur of abstract shapes behind him as his hero notebooks flash by one, showing his determination in spite of how impossible his dream seems to be. Another
Never
great
give up.
design element is the way that these notebooks are constructed. The first one is written in badly misspelled hiragana,
Oh, so,
which
like,
is
as if
the
he's
first of
maturing
3
throughout
alphabets that
drawing
Japanese
on 'em.
kids learn in school. Hiragana isn't supposed to be used to transcribe foreign words like hero, and correct writing uses dashes to denote extended syllables rather than repeated
Oh,
characters.
very clever.
The way that Midoriya writes hero note on the first book is roughly the equivalent of spelling hero with 2 E's in English.
Oh, right.
His writing gets better as he gets older, and eventually he
still doing
switches
it.
to the katakana alphabet, which is used to sound out foreign words, but the childish
Oh, that's brilliant.
enthusiasm and drawings of All Might also disappear from the covers. The notes become less fun and more smart
Yeah.
and practical. All the while, Midoriya stares at his feet, and eventually so do we, as he comes to a stop and the books come tumbling down, mirroring how Kacchan tossed one of them out the window of the classroom.
Oh,
This
gotcha.
makes a natural transition to a single shot that beautifully sums up the two's relationship. First, we see them as children, and while there's a divide between them, the dividing line is relatively smooth and calm. The pair smile at each other as friends, though judging from the woods around them, this is just moments before Deku pulled Bakugo out of the water, bruising his ego and ending their friendship forever. We shift from the simple
Mm-hmm. This is so
childhood
good.
innocence of summer to spring cherry
And it's
blossoms, with the pair now
proper
looking
rippling
away
now.
from each other, and the dividing line between them now much more wild and violent in its animation. Cherry blossoms are typically associated with graduation and the start of a new school year. In other words, with endings and new beginnings. So in one shot, we know that sometime between elementary school and their graduation of middle school,
It
these
all fell
kids
apart.
went from being friends to enemies, and that after entering the same high school, shown by the change in uniforms as we zoom in on their faces, their rivalry only got more violent. We can pick
Intense.
all of this
So
up
clever
without
just using the
having
black line.
ever seen an episode of the show. The zoom in both brings them closer together and makes their emotions towards each other, Bakugo's cold anger at Deku and Deku's determination to surpass him,
It's very
fill
determined
the
look, isn't
entire
it?
screen. And of course, the dividing line between them is now a chaotic, electrified
Like, where'd
mess.
that go?
With each of these transitions, the inevitability of their future conflict is increasingly impressed upon the viewer, leading up to the explosive, angry punch that
Yeah.
caps off their fight during training. Out of that explosion, we see Shigaraki emerge, followed by a horde of villains fighting All Might and Eraserhead. There's not
So
a lot
cool.
to this fight beyond it simply looking cool, and of course the fact that it represents the USJ arc from the end of the season, but it looks really damn cool.
Yeah, it
Even
does.
though
Look at
they're
that.
minor characters, all of the villain designs are unique and memorable.
Very
the camera
well
moves in a
drawn.
fast and dynamic fashion, and the match cuts between
Intensity.
scenes just work. Jumping from Shigaraki's open hand to All Might's, from a dust
Closing
explosion
fist.
to Kurogiri exploding into a black mist, from his eyes opening to Eraserhead's doing the same, and from this random villain to Deku's shoe. The last one might seem a little strange, but the design of the villain's coat looks kind of like a shoe, and when you watch the cut at full speed, all of it just flows together
Blends in,
like
yeah.
magic.
Yeah,
It's
well.
really satisfying and fun to watch, as is the sequence that follows, where the most important members of Class 1A show off their superpowers one by one. There's
To
not
see you get a
much
bit of a
narrative meaning to it beyond, hey,
idea
here's
of
some
what they
cool
can do.
heroes, look what they can do, but it gets you pumped nonetheless. That leads into a beautiful shot where Deku morphs into his hero
suit, yeah.
costume,
That's
then
amazing.
throws a punch as his fist rapidly swaps out with All Might's, with the purple energy of One for All coursing
That's
in the
cool.
background, showing his struggle to carry the torch from his mentor. This is followed by all of the characters who weren't important enough to join the earlier lineup taking up battle poses, two at a time in front of the UA logo, before we see a final group shot of
All
the
of them
whole
together
class
look so
getting
good.
ready to defend their school. At first I was a little bit upset that top waifu Toru was relegated to being a second stringer here, but then I noticed that she was actually included in the montage without her gloves or shoes right here, and she shows up at other points in the OP here, here, and also here. And hardcore fans will notice her reflection here, so Best Girl gets the most screen time, as she should. The Day is a pretty incredible opening, with more to it than first meets the eye, but they only get more complicated from here. The second opening, Peace Sign, kicks off with a triumphant choir chanting, Deku standing proud atop a high-rise, and All Might soaring through the air in front of him. There are a few important points of contrast between this and the opening shot of the first OP. The most obvious is Deku's expression. Rather than looking meek and lost, he looks confident and self-assured.
Yes, he's smiling.
And he no longer reaches out, desperate to grasp at his idol. Instead, he stands confidently, observing All Might in action. That confidence comes from knowing that he's on the path to reach All Might one day. His hero still soars above him, but Deku's not just kneeling on the ground anymore. He's already ascended to the top of a building, and he's preparing to leap up to that height. The two are no longer surrounded by a glowing abstract void, but a very real physical cityscape.
It makes it's
Deku
not a dream
now
anymore,
knows
it's
his
a reality.
place in the world. He also has a much clearer idea of who All Might is. Instead of seeing him as a jumble of heroic attributes, the reflection on the building as he flies past it shows us his full body and face. Not only does that tell us he's flying really fast, it implies a deeper understanding on the observer, Deku's part. The first 10 seconds of this opening are rightly spent building up to a single, fantastic wide shot. The shift around Deku makes us wonder exactly what he's seeing, and the payoff to that is great. Instead of simply looking up at All Might, we see awareness on Deku's part of how he fits into that picture. We're seeing something that
He's part of the
never
world
saw
of heroes
in the first
now.
OP here. The two of them framed together by themselves in a single shot. All Might may be high up and far away, but this implies that he's reachable, though even if he wasn't, that wouldn't stop Deku from trying, as we see in the beautiful first ED of the series. We cut back to Deku's face, smiling up at his hero, and the title card fades in over top. From the title, we jump to a montage of each student warming up for the UA Sports Festival. The stretches they perform are pretty simple, though well animated, and each student trains with a look of intense determination on their faces. This sequence serves as a suitable build-up to the action climax of the OP, but there's a little more to it than that. The places where most of the students train hold significance to them. Bakugo's is maybe the most obvious. He's doing warm-ups in the building that he and Deku destroyed during their first training exercise at the school, signifying that he's still hung up on the loss and eager for revenge. Uraraka is training on what appears to be Dagobah Beach, the beach that Deku had to clean up in order to earn the power of One for All. This signifies her worries that she's only gotten to where she is because she's relied on Deku and her other classmates, and her desire to accomplish more by herself. I think Eijiro is just here to fill time, though, since he's not all that important to the tournament arc, and while the arc does develop his character a bit, his rivalry with Tetsu
everyone has like a decent
just a gag.
sized role in the...
that he's probably here because he was super high up on the jump popularity
that makes
poll,
sense.
but that's just a theory. You know. Ida's stretch also feels a bit fillery, although the fact that he's stretching in the darkened outskirts of the stadium where he receives the news that his big brother was attacked by the hero killer Stain could be early foreshadowing of the next arc of the series. That would cast his cold expression here in a new light. By the way, in a nifty Easter egg, you can catch a glimpse of Best Girl Toru right here. We catch up with Deku stretching on the same rooftop we saw at the start of the OP, leaning back and staring up with a determined look on his face directly into the sun. I guess he and Donald Trump missed the same memo. Jokes aside, the sun represents the heroic ideal of All Might here, just as the star that Deku was chasing in the first ED did there. Deku has his sights set firmly on that goal, but when we cut to Todoroki, we can see that his view of that ideal is clouded, literally, by his pride and his hang-ups about his father.
Symbolism.
Deku and Todoroki are posed in almost the exact same way here, which creates a sense of visual continuity continuity between the two scenes, as well as a point of comparison between the two of them. The fact that they face in opposite directions hints that there's a conflict between them that will be the focus of this arc, which is confirmed when Todoroki turns to face Deku in the group shots. The two of them are the only students to move in these shots, aside from Eijiro, which almost seems like he's misreading the atmosphere and thinks that he's the protagonist, the one that Todoroki is challenging, but that would be a bit out of character for him, so I think they just felt like they needed more motion in the shot to give it a bit of extra punch. But even the stationary characters are all posed in a way that conveys a bit of their personalities, and as always, Toru manages to be the cutest out of the lot,
even though
despite
she's invisible.
Going back to what makes Todoroki turn around, we see sunlight washing over him as the clouds overhead pass, seeing clearly for the first time in a while what it really means to be a hero. When he turns toward his left side, acknowledging that his father's powers are part of him. This all foreshadows the transformation that he will undergo during his incredible fight with Deku, which I'm going to be talking a lot about in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. Although that fight is what we see next after the groups face off. These action shots are pretty damn beautiful, but there's not much to analyze here again, except for the obvious symbolism of seeing Deku blow away Todoroki's ice. They mainly just offer a glimpse of what's going to happen during the tournament while showing off the powers of each respective classmates. They're good action shots aside from this weird insert, but they're not quite as cool or cleverly cut together as the action from the first OP. That said, the shot of All Might leaping across the entire city is pretty damn impressive animation, maybe the best we've seen in these OPs so far, and it creates a solid sense of continuity with the start of the OP. When All Might lands, oh hey look, Toru. When All Might lands, the camera spins around him, briefly showing us the same heroic pose from the start of the first OP, but then he turns to face us, and with us, Deku, who we see when we zoom back through the crowd, standing and staring him down with the same pose he had on the roof. This shows that the whole class is united by the same ambition to become heroes. Even Bakugo, and that's going to become important later. It also establishes that in order to reach All Might, Deku will need to surpass all of his classmates.
Everybody else,
and even his
they're all
teachers.
in the way.
The way that All Might lands could also be a reference to the start of the final exam arc, but they reference that more directly in the next OP, which we'll get to in a week. The last shots give our main characters one more chance to show off their powers, and out of these there's a notable contrast with how Deku throws his punch. In the first OP he looked wild and desperate, and his fist was mixed up with All Might's. Here he looks a bit more focused and collected, and we see only his fist, showing greater ownership of One for All. The last shot that we see is another group action pose, with the whole class in costume leaping into action, all headed in the same direction, with looks of joy on their faces, except for the perpetually sour Ida and Todoroki. In other words, they are all happily heading toward the same heroic ideal. This is a great shot with lots of visual variety. Every character feels distinctive, and their poses are really fun, except for Yuga Aoyama, who is weirdly static and out of place, like they just forgot to draw him and then just took a stock pose and dragged it up to the top of the screen where everyone else is flying. In a final flash, we see the group shot shift colors to a yellow background with heavy shading reminiscent of the style of Western comics, and, more notably, the shading style used for All Might, hammering home that idea that they're all being inspired by him. The final frame of color is a little more overt about this, the whole group painted in UA white and blue, ready to get into the tournament arc. The third opening, Sora ni Uteba, does some interesting things with its end card too, but we'll have to get into that next week, when we'll also be comparing all three openings to figure out which is the best. And boy, it's been a while since we've done one of those, huh? If you're itching for something to do in the meanwhile and you want more Studio
That's gonna be good.
content,
I think that's what you guys are actually suggesting, but I'm glad I've watched this one first now.
It's got a lot of interesting differences from the anime, so even if you've seen that several times over, and who can blame you if you have, it's great, it's still worth
See what he did there several
and
times.
you can get a lot of reading in with the deal that Bookwalker has going. Between now and October 2nd, a few days before part 2 of this video will go up, if you buy 3 volumes of Eureka 7, you'll get a 500 yen discount coupon that you can spend on anything else in the store. The volumes are 600 600 yen each, so if you combine that with the promo code BASEMENT, which gives you a 600 yen discount on any purchase, you're essentially getting 3 volumes for the price of 1. And they have a similar sale going on for Slice of Life manga if you want to carry that first coupon over and get a second one. The Bookwalker phone app makes it super easy and convenient to take these volumes with you, so you can read on a commute or in bed or on the toilet. Don't judge me. And these are very high quality scans that let you zoom in super close, so you don't have to worry about missing any details in the artwork. You can pick these volumes up at global.bookwalker.jp, and of course you can use the discount code to buy anything else on the store that might catch your eye, including Volume 3 of Konosuba, which was just recently released. Let me know in the comments below who your favorite character from Hiroaka is, and while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe and join the notification squad. Or join my Patreon like all these wonderful people if you want to support me more directly. If you're interested in seeing me talk more about Hiroaka, check out the next part of this video here, unless it's not out yet, in which case that'll link to a comparison.
Gonna do that next, I think, because I was gonna do
click over here for an OP analysis of the other great superhero anime, One Punch Man, which just broke 1 million views. Woo! Nice. I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, reminding you to never skip the openings.
Yeah, I was gonna do Your Lie in April next, but now I want to do that. Let's see which one he thinks best and why. It's so interesting. There's so much like thought gone into the into those OPs when you actually look at it. It is like dissecting the characters and showing the story progression in that. It's really cool. I love all these. I'm learning so much from watching all these different things like that you guys suggest. So yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. What did you guys think of that? What did you guys think it is? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys, all of you guys, next time.